Garden Basics with Farmer Fred is brought to you by Smart Pots, the original lightweight, long-lasting fabric plant container. It's made in the USA. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information and a special discount. That's smartpots.com/Fred. Welcome to the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. If you're just a beginning gardener or you want good gardening information, well, you've come to the right spot. It could be one of the prettiest insects you'll ever see. It could also be one of the most voracious insects to find in your garden or on your farm. And right now it's spreading throughout the eastern United States and it's into the Midwest. It's the spotted lanternfly. What does it look like? What crops can it overtake? How do you control this pest that's spreading rapidly across the country? Today, it's all about the spotted lanternfly. And Debbie Flower and I tackle more of your garden questions, such as, how do you plant in mulch? Carefully. Is there a trick to successfully planting carrot seeds? Yes, there is. Can I add tea bags to my compost pile? Maybe. And I gave up my peach tree for dead. Now there's new branches growing from the trunk near the ground. Will this peach tree make it? It depends. We're podcasting from Barking Dog Studios here in the beautiful Abutilon jungle in suburban purgatory. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast, brought to you today by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. Let's go. Just like we always say, all gardening is local. Another thing, all garden pests are local too. Have you heard about the spotted lanternfly? Well, if you live in the mid-Atlantic states or anywhere in the Northeast and going into the Midwest, you know what the spotted lanternfly is. It's a very invasive species. And invasive species have the potential to cause high levels of economic damage when introduced into new environments. And this is a fairly new pest, the spotted lanternfly. It was first detected in Pennsylvania back in 2014. It spread to New York, Delaware, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia. It originated in northern China, also found in Vietnam, Japan, and South Korea. It's been spotted in other states as well. West Virginia, Rhode Island, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, other states as well. It is a plant hopper. It's a plant sucker, and it is very voracious on a wide number of plant species throughout North America. Here in California, we haven't had that invasive spotted lanternfly get established here yet, but the state Food and Agriculture Department is intercepting it at several airports and other locations throughout Northern California, so it cannot get established here. It is a threat to some major crops throughout the United States, not the least of which are grapes and walnuts and stone fruits, woody ornamentals too, hops, and it lives on the tree of heaven. That is its preferred species of choice. Debbie Flower is here, native of Long Island, New York. You've seen pests there that you haven't seen here.
Correct.
I'm thinking of the Japanese beetle.
Japanese beetle and gypsy moth, yeah.
Yeah, and both of those two are intercepted in California and so far thwarted. We have a very vigorous inspection service here.
We do, and I was just in the East, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut, and saw nothing of the agricultural inspection that I readily submit to when I leave the California borders in my car. I drove around all those states, crossed the borders. Nobody stopped me. Nobody checked me or my car to see if the spotted lanternfly egg cases were on my vehicle, which is one of the ways they call it the hitchhiker bug, because it hitchhikes on anything, any smooth surface. Vehicles, what I read about how it came into the U.S. was on stone that was imported from China.
I have heard that as well. And the adult is very obvious. It's a very colorful,
very pretty insect.
Yes, and it has lots of spots. The juvenile versions of the spotted lanternfly, though, of course, are much smaller. They do have spots, but I think they could easily be mistaken for ladybugs.
Do you? The way they have that protruding nose.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the mouth parts, I'm not sure which it is, makes it look different to me. That the dots, the black, the youngest instars, it has incomplete metamorphosis, meaning it hatches from an egg and then it goes through several stages that all look somewhat similar but somewhat different from each other, shedding its skin, becoming a new one, shedding its skin, becoming a new one. And the youngest ones are black with white dots, which remind me of the dots on a monarch butterfly.
Oh, yeah, they do. I mean, the spots are very obvious. We had an email from Charlie in Brooklyn who has a plot in a community garden there, and his job these days is being the head of the war on spotted lanternflies as far as capturing the young ones, the instars, and basically it's sticky tape traps.
Yes, and there was an article in this past Sunday's New York Times about the spotted lanternfly, and another gentleman, Neil Weissman, who's president of a Roosevelt Island Garden Club, and he also he sets traps, like you mentioned, but he also uses a vacuum, which you have suggested, a small vacuum to suck them up.
And then dispose of them properly.
Yes, you don't want them to escape at that point.
No, you just can't throw them in the trash can. That way, you would have to bag them, I would think, twice.
Bag them, and soapy water is often good for killing insects because they breathe through their skin. You put a little oil in it, too, and those things mess up their breathing apparatus. We'll
have a picture of the spotted lanternfly just because it is so gosh darn pretty.
Yeah, it sure is.
With today's podcast. But the spotted lanternfly, what is about it that makes it so hazardous to crops?
Well, it's a hopper. It's a sucking insect. So it feeds by piercing plant tissue and sucking the contents of the cells out. We have lots of hoppers that are pests in this country. If you walk through a lawn, often things are flying out, little bugs are flying out of the lawn, and those are often hoppers of some sort. But this one has no enemies. And so it seems to thrive in all kinds of environments. You and I have been speculating based on the states that it has infiltrated in the U.S. Temperature doesn't seem to be a limiting factor in where it lives. And we have a lot of its favored hosts, especially in the East. When I would take the train from Oyster Bay, New York into New York City, the rights of way on either side of the train were full of tree of heaven. Ailanthus altissima.
And it spreads pretty easily, too. The insect lays its eggs on plant and non-plant items like stones or pallets, outdoor furniture, railway cars, firewood, and vehicles, which means it can spread quickly. The spotted lanternfly has at least 40 host species, including probably the most valuable agricultural crops in California, or among them grapes, walnuts, and all the stone fruits.
Yes. When it gets older, when it's young, the part of the plant that it attacks is the new growth. And so the egg mass, when it's first laid, is clear, and the female puts a white liquid over it, which ages to pink and then to tan. And as it ages, it even cracks. And so it looks like mud. So the egg mass just looks like a smear of mud on something. And then when the young hatch, they can only feed on the soft tissue. They don't have very developed mouth parts yet. And so they climb up the trunk of the tree to the soft plant parts. And that's where the traps are most effective, because you catch them on the sticky band on the tree trunk as they're making their way up to the top. But the adults, once they have gotten into the adult phase, their mouth parts are strong enough to go right through the bark of the tree.
Wow. And now the job, especially since it's hatching time for spotted lanternflies, I guess between April and June, there's a lot of sticky tapes being distributed and wrapped around these tree of heaven trees. By the way, the tree of heaven does not only just support an invasive insect, the spotted lanternfly. Here in California, we are very familiar with another pest that likes the tree of heaven, and that's the brown marmorated stink bug.
Ah, yes, I had forgotten that.
And we have been attempting to control it. I don't know if we've just accepted it now here as an ongoing pest to be basically.
I don't know the answer to that either, but if we have, it's a very low population.
Yeah, well, I don't think we have the tree of heaven population that is back east either.
No, we don't. You don't see them near as much as you see them all over. The the sort of wastelands of the East. New York City, yes, it's got a lot of concrete and asphalt, but it also has, little corner lots, and Tree of Heaven can grow almost anywhere, and it can grow as a colony. So if you've got a big tree or a tree somewhere, it can send plant parts underground and come up blocks away and be attached to that same plant.
It spreads by seed as well. The female trees can produce something like 300,000 samaras, which is a seed-holding structure that is sort of shaped like a helicopter wing, which means it can get airborne and fly a great distance, thus spreading the tree even more. And when you've got a tree of heaven, I don't know if it's sort of my feelings about the tree of heaven are the same as my feelings about possums. What are they good for? Absolutely nothing.
Oh, possums are good for eating lots of fleas and things like that.
Okay. From each other, maybe. That's with the tree of heaven. It's a weed tree.
Also from China.
From China.
Is, the pest and the tree are from China, but China would have the natural pest of the lanternfly that could control it, but we don't have that. So the eggs are laid between about September and November, between the first freeze. Each female lays up to 2 masses of 30 to 60 eggs, which are in rows, but several rows, tight rows, and then covered with the white fluid that ages to pinkish gray and finally to tan with cracks and looks like mud. Then the nymphs arise, and it depends where you are, but between about April and October, they're fast moving, but they cannot fly. And they actually hatch between April and June, but the nymphs of the various stages are around as late as October. And the first ones are very small. They're only 1/8 of an inch. So they're black, 1/8 of an inch, very small with the white dots. But they grow up to 4 instars, they're called. So 4 stages of young growth. And the 4th one is about 1/2 of an inch long. And then it becomes an adult. The adult looks like a moth. And when it is at rest, so its wings are closed, it's basically gray with black dots. It's not very colorful at that, but when it opens those wings, woo-wee, baby, it's pretty. So it's gray and white and red and dotted, very colorful display. And the moth is only about 1 inch long. They can fly. They don't fly very smoothly, and they don't fly long distances. And those are the adults. Those moths are the adults that can drill right into the trunk of a tree. And you're looking at a picture of that right now.
I am looking at a picture of a mass of spotted lanternfly instars that are on, I believe it's on a tree of heaven. I'm not sure of that too, but they could mass and swarm on any sort of even inanimate objects, telephone poles, pallets, outdoor equipment, things like that.
Well, I think the insect itself will mass on its hosts, the things it's going to eat from. It's got one job, and that's to reproduce. It only has 1 generation per year, but it has to keep itself healthy and well fed. And then it does that by feeding on the tree trunk. And in that picture, there is no bark visible. It is just all the moths. Yeah, so it's a very gray picture.
Yeah. So what's a gardener to do?
Well, keep an eye out.
Yeah.
Look for these insects. Really, if you don't know what it is, you think you do, but you don't, put it in a plastic bag. I would take it. Often it's said take it to the local nursery or the master gardeners. Master gardeners would probably know. I think they have been educated, at least in Sacramento County, about the spotted lanternfly. But you could also go to your county cooperative extension or your ag commissioner's office and take it to them. Even if it's dead, don't smash it at that point. But even smashed, maybe they can ID it. That's I have to think about that. Get it identified, know where you got it, when you got it, and what plant you got it from, if possible. If not, the location alone would be helpful.
I haven't read anything about chemical controls for this pest. It's
neither
all physical controls.
It is. They're just saying smash and report.
Yeah.
That is the recommendation in all of I've gone to many different state websites to see what they all say, and they all say the same thing, smash and report.
I guess you get them to hold still for a while with the sticky tape.
Right. I was going to say that there are probably some reasons pesticides, number one, haven't been tested, and in the U.S. they need to be tested and labeled before they can be used. Even an off-label use, then you have to have a license to apply it. So that process is not instantaneous. So I'm sure somebody's working on it somewhere. It is a leafhopper, they move very quickly. Leafhoppers in general, we don't treat with pesticides either because they do move quickly, and pesticides, they have to touch somehow. A systemic into the plant is really iffy, especially which the insect would then absorb through its feeding practices. But if it's on grapes, which is something California is very afraid of, or stone fruit or walnuts, it could get into the fruit, and then that destroys the crop anyway.
Or almonds, too.
Or almonds, boy, yeah, we could be in big trouble here.
Yeah, so if you're talking grapes and almonds, that's the majority of California agriculture.
Yes.
That would be dangerous, especially when you're preparing for holiday time and you're going to be bringing in things new to the house. Check outdoor items, especially for spotted lanternfly egg masses. Scrape any egg masses into a plastic zippered bag filled with hand sanitizer, then zip the bag shut and dispose of it properly. Inspect your trees and plants for signs of this pest, particularly at dusk and at night when the insects tend to gather in larger groups on the trunks or stems of plant. Inspect trees, especially the tree of heaven, as well as bricks, stones, and other smooth surfaces for those egg masses.
Like your car.
Yeah.
Your car, your boat, your trailer that sit outside or spend time outside. They don't necessarily sit out all the time, but enough time in the fall, September through November, when those eggs are laid. You want to make sure you find them before moving them to another location.
Plants that ooze or weep or have a fermented odor. Now, there's a possible sign you might have spotted lanternfly or a sticky buildup of fluid, sometimes called honeydew, on plants or on the ground beneath the plants, or sooty mold, which is the result of basically dried honeydew on leaves that has picked up wind-borne pathogens.
Sooty mold is basically plant sap. When an insect punctures into a plant cell with its mouth parts, the pressure of inside the plant that is pushing the fluid into the insect is so high it can't eat all of it. And so some comes out the other side. We see this with aphids, with scale. You've parked under a tree in some parking lot and come out and your windshield's all spotted. That is honeydew. Then if it falls on something that hangs around, like the leaves below where the infestation is, then funguses come in and lay their spores, germinate on the honeydew, and they grow on it, and the blackness, and it can be dirt too, obviously, the blackness then cuts off the light to the plant and the plant can't grow.
One good website that is a clearinghouse for a lot of spotted lanternfly information is run by the USDA, their APHIS division, which is short for Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. And if you do an online search for USDA and spotted lanternfly, this page will come up because not only are there great pictures of the pests, there are also links to every state that has them and where, if you live in that state, you can take or inquire about the spotted lanternfly. Mm-hmm. So check that out. We'll have a link to that USDA site in today's show notes as well. Spotted lanternfly is definitely nothing to ignore. So watch your plants and
squash and report. Praying mantises and spiders have been observed eating spotted lanternfly, but they don't make a dent on the population. So they're not going to be our long-term control.
So like you say, it's up to us to do the smashing.
Smash and report. Yeah.
All right. Spotted lanternfly. Watch out for this one. Thanks, Debbie.
Yeah. Thanks, Fred.
I've told you about Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric planters. They're sold worldwide. Smart Pots are proudly made 100% right here in the USA. They're BPA-free and lead-free, making them safe for growing vegetables and other edibles. Well, the folks at Smart Pots have added a new product to their lineup, perfect for building the healthiest soil imaginable for your garden by composting. It's the Smart Pot Compost Sack, a large 100-gallon fabric bag that's lightweight yet extremely durable and lasts for years. It can hold 12 cubic feet of pure compost. This rugged fabric is entirely porous, containing many micropores that allow for air circulation and drainage. It's easy to start a compost pile with the Smart Pot Compost Sack. Just open the sack, set it on level ground, and start adding your compostable materials, grass clippings, vegetable peelings, coffee grounds, and more, as well as fallen leaves, straw, and shredded paper. Next, place the optional cover over the sack. That's all there is to it. Smart Pots are available at independent garden centers and select Ace and True Value hardware stores nationwide. You can find the location nearest you at their website, and you can buy it online from Smart Pots. Just visit smartpots.com/Fred. And don't forget that /Fred part, because on that page are details about how, for a limited time, you can get 10% off your Smart Pot order by using the coupon code FRED, F-R-E-D. Do it at checkout from the Smart Pot store. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information about the complete line of Smart Pot's lightweight, colorful, award-winning fabric containers and their new compost sack. And don't forget that special Farmer Fred 10% discount. It's Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric planter. Go to smartpots.com/Fred. We like to answer your garden questions here on the Garden Basics podcast. A lot of ways you can get your questions in. You can use speakpipe.com/Garden Basics and just talk to your computer, and your question will get to us. You can give us a call as well. We have numbers. 916-292-8964. 916-292-8964. Debbie Flower is here to help us answer these garden questions. And we get a fruit tree question from Gail. Debbie.
Hi there. My name's Gail. And last year, I planted a peach tree and promptly killed it by not watering it enough. However, I noticed about 3 months ago that there were these little red stalks that were coming up from what I thought was the dead part of the peach tree. I'm wondering, can I go ahead and grow the peach from that? Or is it better to start anew?
Start anew. Bye. No. Well,
that's certainly the easiest thing to do.
However, there is a chance that those new sprouts are coming from the scion, not the rootstock.
Mm-hmm.
Explain the difference.
Many woody plants are grafted. There are even some herbaceous plants that people graft. If you buy a tree and it has a name in quotes, an Alberta peach tree, for instance, Alberta being in quotes, single quotes, then it has been grafted. So peach trees are started from seed, and it's unknown what the parents of that seed were, and it's just to develop a nice root system. And then a piece of an Alberta, in the case of my example, peach tree is grafted onto the young peach tree that started from seed. And the plant, as it grows, is handled such to favor the Alberta part of the plant for the top and the rootstock part for the roots. And so many fruit trees for sure, and as well as just ornamental trees that have these what we call cultivar names have been grafted. And the top part is called the scion, and the bottom part is called the rootstock. And very occasionally you'll have something called an interstock. If you look, and that would be a piece between the scion and the rootstock. And the interstock somehow controls the growth, makes it, generally dwarfs it, is what an interstock is used for. And the rootstock is chosen for the location, the soil type, the climate, amount of water, that kind of thing. When you look at the trunk of a grafted tree, you will see a change in the bark where that graft has happened. In commercial production, the graft has happened very close to the soil line. In fact, I had a peach tree that I didn't like. The arborists were I didn't like the scion, I didn't like the cultivar. The arborists were working in my yard, and I asked them to chop it down just to the graft so I could retain the rootstock. And then I grafted onto what I thought was the rootstock. Now, I'm trained at looking at this stuff, right? None of the grafts took. And I have grafted many things before that have been successful. It was because they did not cut it down low enough, and I was grafting into the scion of the previous type of peach. I needed to get to the rootstock. So I let it alone, and I have the same thing happening. Lots of stems coming from, now I know it's the rootstock. They're coming actually from below the ground, and I've looked more carefully and found the graft line, which is very close to the soil line. So I know that these are rootstock, and I will graft something onto that to make a new scion and a new tree, maybe more than one thing. So if you know that the shoots are coming from the scion above the graft, then yes, let it grow and you will have the peach that you purchased. But if they're growing from below the graft line, you've just got rootstock. And if you want to retain it, now that it's developed, it's got a root system, you don't have to worry about watering it again when you first plant it, which is a big job. When you first plant something like that, you need to water very regularly. So if you do know that it's coming from the rootstock and can graft, then you can get a piece of peach or any of the other stone fruits from so nectarine, plum, etc., and graft onto that and have a new tree.
There is some hope, Gail. However, there are 3 very popular rootstocks used on peach trees: Nemagard, Lavelle, and Citation. Citation is usually used for dwarf peach trees. Nemagard is an excellent rootstock for well-drained soils, and the Lavelle is a vigorous rootstock that's more tolerant of wet soils than Nemagard. Some people like the taste of a Lavelle peach. So if you have the Lavelle rootstock, there's a chance you might like the peaches it produces. They may not be to the size that you want. I've heard complaints about the skin and the pit, but if you're just, slicing up a peach for ice cream or whatever, it might be a good choice.
How would she know if she's got Lavelle rootstock?
Call us back in 7 years, Gail, and let us know what you found. Because it may take 5 to 7 years for that rootstock to produce.
To fruit.
Yeah.
Another is, did you keep the tag? Sometimes it will say on the tag what the rootstock is. And the other is some peach cultivars can only be put on, let's say, a Lavelle rootstock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and so if you know the cultivar, would it be at Dave Wilson Nursery?
Yeah, if you
website?
go to davewilson.com, you can look up the rootstocks that they use on their fruit tree. So if it was a Dave Wilson fruit tree, then you're in luck. If not, who knows what it might be on. This is why I'm holding in my left hand here.
Yes, he is.
My garden calendar, my garden diary for 2023. You write down everything that you plant and everything you know about it. Usually when you buy a peach tree or any fruit tree, there are 2 labels on it. One is the scion, one is the rootstock. Copy down both pieces of information, because I'm guaranteeing you those garden gnomes that you have scattered through your garden, they come alive at night. They're going to go to your fruit trees and rip off those tags.
Yes.
And the snails will help them carry it away.
Yes.
So write it down.
Yep.
Very important. You do that.
I do. I have a different system, but I do. I have a spreadsheet for all the plants.
I know it. It's a spreadsheet.
And then I have a folder with pages in it that are dated.
If we were creatures of the 21st century, there would be pictures too.
Yes, attached to those. Yes.
Yes. I tried that once and it's too much work.
It is a lot of work.
Yes. All right. So Gail, the choice is yours, although the expedient solution might be get another peach tree.
Right. They're generally going to bear sooner. And as long as you do that establishment irrigation of watering whenever it needs water for the first 6 weeks of its life, and that in a hot climate can be daily, and you're watering the media it came in, the container media, and then the field soil once a week.
The amazing part also about living in the 21st century, there's all these nifty water timers out there that you can hook up to a faucet or even as part of your main irrigation system that will turn on the water based on a pre-existing schedule, or because you have soil sensors that can sense the moisture and know when to turn on the water itself.
That's really high tech.
I know, but it's out there.
It's out there, yes.
Yeah.
When I go on vacation, if I've planted something new in a field that gets regular irrigation, I will add a timer to the hose bib and run out a hose end emitter of some sort that will spray and put that on a different calendar for the time that I'm out of town.
So the people in that house right over there, 30 feet away from where we're looking out the window here in the Butelon jungle, they're on vacation. But the guy is an internet technology guy.
Oh.
So they're off somewhere in America. I don't know where. But if he gets a message on his phone that the soil is dry,
Cool.
he can turn on the irrigation system.
Cool. I'm going to tell my son about this. My son is a techie.
Because there are systems available that are Bluetooth connected and can relay all this information to your phone. So wherever you are, you can turn on the irrigation system.
Yes, a friend of mine has one of those. Yes.
So it's out there.
Yep.
If you're willing to learn.
Right.
All right, that's the hard part. All right. All right, Gail. Good luck with the peach tree.
Yeah.
Are you thinking of growing fruit trees? Maybe you already are, but you'll want to know more about them. Well, you probably have a million questions, like which fruit trees will grow where I live? What are the tastiest fruits? When's harvest time? How do I care for these trees? The good news is the answers are all nearby. Just go to davewilson.com, click on the Home Garden tab at the top of the page. And in that Home Garden tab, you're going to find a link to their fruit and nut harvest chart so you can be picking delicious, healthy fruits from your own yard for a long growing season. Here in USDA Zone 9, that could be May through December. And you're just a click away with the informative YouTube video series at davewilson.com. As part of that video series, they'll walk you through the simple process of using the Dave Wilson website to find their trees either at a nearby local nursery or at a mail order source. That's Dave Wilson Nursery, the nation's largest grower of fruit trees for the backyard garden. They've got planting tips, taste test results, and information about their revolutionary backyard orchard culture techniques. That'll explain how you can have a cornucopia of different fruit trees in a small backyard. Your harvest to better health begins at davewilson.com. To the garden email bag we go. Debbie Flower is here, and we get a question from St. Louis, USDA Zone 6, and Raul, who says, no doubt you are probably getting several questions this time of year. I appreciate all of your help. I remember listening to a podcast of yours that helped to accelerate carrots from seed. I was trying to find the episode to remember what the secret was. Are you able to direct me to the correct episode? No, Raul, I can't, because I don't think we've ever talked about that.
I haven't. We've talked about peppers.
Yeah.
Accelerating pepper seed germination by soaking them in hydrogen peroxide for 10 minutes.
That's right. And I get more and more converts to that, too.
Yeah, it works.
It speeds it up to a seed that usually takes 3 weeks to germinate. You can get it down to less than 2 weeks.
Right. I've never tried it with carrots. It might be worth a try, especially if you've got more seed than you know what to do with.
I think the big problem when it comes to carrots is planting them so that they're all bunched together because the seeds are just so darn small.
Right.
And you had a student one time in your career as a college horticultural professor who actually came up with a rather ingenious idea.
He did. I was thrilled with that. He said, put the seeds out on a piece of paper in a small dish or something, use a chopstick, dip the chopstick in water, and then touch the seeds, and you'll get one seed on the end. Sometimes you get two, I have to admit, but you get very few seeds on the end of that chopstick, and then you tap it to drop it into the soil.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to dip it into the soil because you'd come back with a stick full of dirt.
Right.
Yeah. All right. And that would work. And another tips that we've heard over the years, too, is because carrots take such a long time to germinate is to plant alongside them something that germinates quickly like radishes so you remember where the carrots are.
Right. Yes. Radishes germinate very quickly. It's a good seed if you're working with kids because it comes up so fast.
How far apart would you plant the radishes from the carrot seeds?
I've heard people say put them right over the carrots, but I wouldn't do that because the root of the radish gets somewhat large and it has fiber feeder roots on it. So I'd probably go I'd space my carrots about, a foot apart, and then I'd put the radishes down the middle, so 6 inches from the carrots.
Okay, that way when you pull up the radish, unless it's some daikon radish that has...
It's gigantic, yes.
It's gigantic. If it's a normal radish, then you won't be disturbing the carrots.
Right.
The timing of planting carrot seeds, though, is important. We have a very long planting season here in USDA Zone 9 for planting carrots, several months a year, but definitely not in the heat of summer.
Right. They don't like the heat. They won't germinate when temperatures get over, 70?
Soil temperatures?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't like it very much when it gets warm. But I guess, now that brings up another question. Can you start them ahead of time in containers? And
I would say no, but it's amazing what I see growing at the nursery in containers that people will buy.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you look online and you see people posting these pictures of these deformed carrots that look like humans walking down the street or whatever.
Yeah, Nixon.
And so typically if you do start them in a container and then move them into the garden, during the transplant process, we always do damage to roots, and carrots are roots. And so that's when you end up often with these odd-shaped carrots. Mm-hmm. If you're okay with that, fine. You can get some odd-shaped carrots just because you have a rock in the way, too.
Which makes a great argument for growing them in a loose, friable soil like you'd find in a raised bed or a large container.
Right.
Yeah. The container would have to be, I would think, for most carrot varieties, at least a 12-inch tall.
Yes, because the carrots need distance to go down. I've read online, I haven't tried this, something about priming carrots seeds, which they say soak them in water an hour, about 4 days, 3 to 4 days before you plan to plant them. I never plan that far ahead, so this may not work for me. And then wrap them in paper towels, put them in an airtight container, so probably a plastic container with a snap-on lid, and leave them at room temperature. And this will allow them to absorb water. And all seeds need, that's one of the first steps of seed germination, is that the seed has to imbibe, is the word used in the textbooks, imbibe water so that it can start the chemical processes inside of the seed.
I thought you were going to say scarification.
No, boy. No, never tried that.
Okay.
I don't think it's needed.
Soaking it with water is scarification.
Yeah, it is, I guess.
Softens the seed coat.
Softens the seed coat, right.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's going to buy you any time, because that's what would happen as soon as you put it in the ground.
Yeah.
But you can, again, because seeds are so small and they can be difficult to work with. 1 year I made seed tapes using, I think we used toilet paper, or it would be a very thin, cheap, white
coffee filter.
Coffee filter, yes. I was going to say paper towel, and make it into a strip, and then place the seeds at the spacing I want. And you can use flour mixed with water as a glue to hold them in place, and then roll them up in that, and again use the flour mixed with water as a paste to shut them, to close that seed tape, and then you just plant the whole.
You can roll it out.
Seed, no, you just plant it all. It's rolled up in the garden.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. It's a way you can commercially buy seed tapes.
You can commercially buy seed tapes. You pay a lot for them, but you can.
But you can make your own.
You can make your own.
Yeah. I guess the problem would be, where do you keep it in the meantime?
Oh, we made it and planted it like that day.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
But that solves that issue.
Yeah.
But I still like the chopsticks. That's a good idea.
Yes, it is a good idea.
All right. Hope that helps you, Raul, with planting carrots. We're delving into the garden email bag on this episode of the Garden Basics Podcast. Debbie Flower is here, and we get a question or two or three or four from Rich in a suburb of Philadelphia. And he says, this year I religiously placed a good layer of wood chips on top of my 4 raised vegetable beds a few months ago. I'm not sure what placing wood chips religiously involves, if you have to dress up like an altar boy.
Well,
to do
ceremony.
The ceremony, there you go.
Cool.
Right. Pomp and circumstance. And anyway, but he says, you have covered mulching extensively, but I've never heard how to plant seedlings into mulched beds. Should I scrape off the mulch temporarily, plant my seedlings, and then replace the mulch carefully around them? Yes and no.
Right.
There you go, Rich.
Yes and no.
Yes.
Scrape it away.
Yeah, scrape it away. And when you push it back towards the plant, don't let it touch the plant.
Right. So if you're planting a plant that was in a container, you're going to do what's called plant proud anyway, which means a little bit of that container media is going to be above soil level. So when I do that, I just move my mulch, and I have mulch in my vegetable garden too, up to the outside of the container media, which is raised above the field soil.
And then Rich asks, what about planting seeds directly into the mulched bed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scrape it away.
Scrape it away.
Leave it scraped away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until you've got that plant out of the ground. And don't push it up against the stem.
it sort of goes against your religious experience of using mulch to deflect the pressure of falling water from the sky.
Right.
Rain, because you've mentioned in the past how rain can actually compact the soil.
Yes, it can. So it's great. In Philadelphia, you're probably going to get snow. You definitely get rain. And in winter, assuming you're not gardening because it gets so cold that everything would die unless you've got a greenhouse or hoop house to put over it, I would definitely mulch the whole thing so that when it rains, the water hits the mulch and slowly seeps into the soil and doesn't cause that compaction.
Rich, thanks for the questions. Enjoy gardening there in Philadelphia. Thanks, Debbie.
You're welcome, Fred.
It seems backyard tomato growers have questions year-round. In early winter, the question is, what tomatoes should I plant next spring? By late winter, the question is it too soon to plant tomatoes? Come spring, the question is, should I prune those first tomato flowers off? And in summer, the frantic tomato grower is asking, what's wrong with my tomatoes? They're turning brown and soft on the bottom. Well, that, of course, is blossom end rot. And that's today's flashback episode of the week, which was about thwarting blossom end rot of tomatoes. It was number 189. By the way, the information in that flashback episode, if you go back and listen to it, goes along nicely with this week's Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter, which is entitled 6 Common Tomato Problems. It's available to you now as well, and you can subscribe for free. So if you're a frustrated tomato grower right now, check out this week's flashback episode. It's number 189. Stop tomato blossom end rot now before it starts. It's from spring of last year. You can find a link to it in today's show notes or at the podcast player of your choice. And look for a link to the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast in the show notes as well, where you can find out more about those 6 common tomato problems. Find a link to the newsletter and podcast in the show notes, or find both at our homepage, gardenbasics.net. Let's delve into the garden email bag here on Garden Basics. Debbie Flower is here. Don from Wisconsin writes in and says, I just retired at the end of last year, and one of the items on my list of 4 to do in retirement is to create or maintain a backyard wildlife refuge with a focus on pollinators, so gardening is a real interest to me. He goes on to say, my wife and I love sweet tea. We brew at least 1 pot per day, maybe 2 in the summer. What can we do with all those used tea bags? In one of your podcasts I've listened to so far, a listener asked about incorporating the silica or keep dry bags from shipping packages in the soil to improve water retention. I don't know about that. The response was, if it doesn't say on the label to spread around your garden, then don't. Hey, that sounds like something I'd say.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. But what about tea bags? Donald asks.
Well, I drink a lot of tea. I drink a whole pitcher myself every morning with 3 tea bags in it. And I always buy organic tea, and I have a kitchen waste compost in my backyard. I'm done with the tea. I put the tea bags into the compost, and when I spread the compost, for the most part, they're gone. However, my husband liked this certain brand of green tea, and when I spread that batch of compost, all the tea bags still existed. They were open, they were empty, but the bags themselves still existed.
Somebody didn't like them.
Yes. I suspect they were made of something like polyester, maybe, or I don't know what they were made of. Apparently, you can check what online. I had a cousin tell me this, what your tea bags are made of, and I checked the brand that I use, and I don't remember where I went, but it was made of something that is compostable.
So, Don, I hope that helps you out about what you can do with those old tea bags. Compost them?
Compost them.
Yeah. All right. It's coming Saturday, August 5th. It's Harvest Day at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center. It's put on by the UC Master Gardeners of Sacramento County. And Harvest Day features speakers, education tables, garden vendors, food trucks, and your chance to explore the beautiful 1-acre garden that is designed for you, the backyard gardener, to take home ideas that you can use in your own yard. The Fair Oaks Horticulture Center was built and is maintained by Sacramento County Master Gardeners. It features areas dedicated to growing berries, herbs, fruit trees, vegetables, a vineyard, native plants, water-efficient plants, and a lot more. Plus, there are sections dedicated to composting, and that includes worm composting. On Harvest Day, each area is staffed by master gardeners who are eager to answer your garden questions. At the dozens of educational tables, you're going to get information from professional nursery people, irrigation specialists, the Audubon Society, soil experts, the master food preservers, local garden clubs, water experts, honeybee, and native bee specialists. Vendors will include Northern California nurseries, exotic plants, cactus and succulents, mushroom growing kits, and more. And the speakers, they're going to be talking about landscape trees, attracting pollinators, and myself and America's favorite retired college horticulture professor, Debbie Flower, will be talking at 8:30 that morning about tips for saving time, money, and water in the garden. Someone once said it's the best garden event in Northern California. Oh, wait, I said that. But it's true. And best of all, it's free. Harvest Day at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center. It's Saturday, August 5th, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's in Fair Oaks Park in Sacramento County. Check today's show notes for a link with more details and maps of Harvest Day. Hope to see you there. The Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast comes out once a week on Fridays. Plus, the newsletter podcast that comes with the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter continues, and that will also be released on Fridays. Both are free, and they're brought to you by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. The Garden Basics podcast is available wherever podcasts are handed out, and that includes our homepage, gardenbasics.net. And that's where you can also sign up for the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast. That's gardenbasics.net, or you can use the links in today's show notes. And thank you so much for listening.